there. I had no mountain. I had no telephone or anything. And I finally got back. And when I got back, all I wanted to see was cement. I do not trust Mother Nature.
How old?
I don't trust
So I'm
nature.
wondering, we didn't decide to put up the link to my article. We should have done
What
that, right?
article?
Okay.
The one you just
Your
read about
study.
sparrows.
Well, we don't have it ready to go.
Oh.
What do you want? Oh, now? Okay, here we go. Yeah, welcome. Welcome very, very much. We're here in the dell or in the forest and everything with our dear, dear friend Nita Renfrew. She has had so many incarnations. She's one of my best friends I've ever in all of my life had. And my friend Maggie and she are very good friends. And she is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant human being. And she's written magnificently on a number of subjects, which she jumps into full tilt boogie and really gets down to the realities of very interesting things and themes that she's dealt with. And she's currently involved, after having been with the what do you call it? The violence of the, what do you call it? The Ruby Ridge and all that stuff.
Revolutions.
Revolutionists and all this, all kind, and she went in Greenland. She went into Greenland and all kinds of things. She's always doing something, and she's currently involved with the birds of Central Park in such a magnificent way. We're going to be talking about it. The name is Nita Renfrew. She's one of my best friends, and I'm very, very happy to welcome you to the set, Nita.
Well,
I was
thank you.
just complaining about I hate nature, and you seem to have a great affection for nature, but we could talk about that. But anyway, Nita, so good to see you again.
Well,
And
nice to see
the
you.
latest venture that you're on, you've been into the nature thing for quite a while. When
Well-
did you get off politics? You were very much involved with politics
Yes.
for a while.
Well, I gave up on human beings.
You gave up on human beings. Okay.
And I started, it's funny.
Oh, she's also brilliant. Okay, brilliant. Yeah.
We talk about nature, and I happen to live just a few doors away from Central Park.
I know.
And you would never think that in the middle of New York you have a source of nature, but I found out that we have it everywhere. So in different periods of crisis,
Yeah.
I started going to the park,
Yeah.
and at one point, and at
You
one
mean
point,
personal crisis?
personal crisis.
Yeah, right. Okay.
A personal crisis. And at one point, I injured my knee, and I couldn't walk.
I remember. I remember
Okay.
when you had that. Yeah.
And it went on for months and months, and it's still injured.
Is it really? Yeah.
Yeah, but I can walk now.
Okay, good. That's good.
But there were several months when I could, and I could
remember,
barely
yeah.
make it 2 short blocks
Yeah.
up Fifth Avenue
yeah.
to the entrance of 76th Street and,
Yeah.
and Central
Well, you're
Park.
practically right in Central Park where you live.
But it
practically,
was
yeah.
a real ordeal just to make it those 2
That's
blocks.
not very far.
And it's
You're
not
so
very far.
close to Central
And I would
Park at
limp-
74th Street.
I would limp up there,
Mhm.
and a few years ago there weren't so many tourists in the park as there are now.
Is that right? Okay.
We've been overrun.
You've
by-
been there for
by
quite a
tourists.
long,
Yeah.
20-odd
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
So I started sitting on this bench just right inside and I got to know the Fifth Avenue sparrows around there. I mean, Fifth Avenue sparrows.
Yeah, right.
You know, people always, they always sort of poo-poo sparrows as being an invasive species and a drab brown and so on. And I would sit there, and the sparrows started coming to me, and I started feeding them sunflower seeds.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 2 years running.
I remember when you were doing that, yeah.
Every day I would go out there, and I would spend sometimes 3 or 4 hours with this flock of sparrows.
Yeah, I know. They're beautiful, really, yeah.
And I got to know them. And I
Uh-huh.
began, and I got to know that these are all individuals. I think they're more intelligent than we are.
Okay, well, that's an interesting thing, yeah.
Which
yeah,
is
go
interesting,
ahead, yeah.
and this is part. And and I didn't train the sparrows; they trained me.
Right.
Like they
right.
trained me in what they wanted,
Uh-huh.
how they wanted to receive the sunflower seeds.
Uh-huh.
At certain times of the year, they want me to throw them in the air, and then they because they play.
Yeah.
They like.
All right,
They like
that's
to
interesting.
play.
That's interesting.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So they'll all compete to see who can catch that seed.
Yeah.
And then if they don't, and maybe just one will, go up and catch it. But they would indicate to me that they start jumping up and down because they want me to throw the seeds, not just throw them on the ground.
And they had a certain order among themselves, and too, the manifest,
A complete order among themselves.
Yeah, right.
And so I got to know that that there was one older sparrow who was slower than the others, and he was very purposive, and he would come, and so the sparrows actually started lining up on the bench next to me.
Yeah.
And taking, and I would hand them the seeds from my fingers, and they would come one after the other, and some of them would, they were cute. Some of them would jump the line.
Yeah.
Some of them would push the others away. So
sort of like kids in school.
Like
maybe.
kids in school.
Yeah.
So when one sparrow would be staying there, because they chew the seeds and then they take another one and so on. And
I've never paid much attention to it, but I'm listening and learning.
This older sparrow began to, he would sit there and he would take 7 seeds, and the other sparrows would try to push him out of the way and so on, and they would take the seeds out of his mouth.
Right out of his mouth?
Right out of his mouth. And he would, go along with it.
Can you tell a boy sparrow from a girl sparrow?
Yeah.
They're different colored or something?
Well, they're a little bit smaller.
Smaller, the women or the men?
The younger ones.
Younger is always smaller.
Yeah.
But can you tell a female sparrow from a male sparrow?
The male sparrows have black bibs.
Oh, I see, okay.
And the females have beige.
I see, okay, yeah.
And the more I looked at these sparrows, I thought, it's like, I see, clothes on Madison Avenue that are these colors, and nobody says they're drab brown.
Yeah, right.
They call them cinnamon and nutmeg and, all kinds of, and, dove gray and linen white and so on.
And these creatures are all just walking around like models,
And they're walking around, and they have these intricate designs on them, and they're just beautiful.
No, I know, right,
So this one
You're
sparrow...
talking just sparrows, but there's others too,
This one sparrow, he would stay there for a second, and he was sort of like an old grandfather, where kids sort of jump on him and pull at him and so on, and he didn't mind.
Yeah.
And then he would go and he would sit down at the edge of the bench or up a little high, and he would just sit there and watch. And I realized with time that he had a rank. He was like, but he wasn't like the leader. He was the spiritual leader.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Which is very interesting because he would sort of guide the young sparrows.
Yeah.
And he would watch
like
over them.
Like a spiritual leader.
Like a spiritual leader.
Yeah, by example.
And and a few times I saw he would go, because there were bushes in back of me, and he would go to a branch, and sparrows chirp a lot, but they also have a language which is more like chattering.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a real and a few times I saw him go, and he would perch on a branch up above, and he would start lecturing. And this would go on for 15 minutes.
And the other sparrows pay attention?
Most of the sparrows would go, and they would line up. They would
like
spread out.
children?
They would spread out below, like in orchestra foundation, and listen to him.
No.
And
really?
Yes. Yeah.
You weren't just imagining.
No. This happened, and it was loud. He was like talking to them. He was talking to them, and then after and they didn't all go, because they're not regimented like we
people,
do.
Right.
They're more flexible and so on.
They're
more like
fancy free.
like American Indians.
Sort
of like when they had
more like children, maybe.
When they did military things, they say they did what they wanted. It's like herding cats if you wanted to make them all do the same thing.
Yeah, right.
And with animals, it's the same way. It's like they have their leaders and they have their order and the way they do things. But,
I guess that's true.
But they're not regimented. Okay. And so a few of the sparrows would stay behind with me, but most of them would go and spread out below him. And then he'd stop, he'd chirp, chirp. And
this is with your initial meeting with the sparrows? I mean, because you've been with them and learned a lot from them in terms of their organization,
And I realized as I watched
this was an initial meeting with the sparrows.
Well, no, this happened over a period. Meaning I started noticing. It's like it takes a while before they let you enter their world.
Right. Okay. Right. I can see that. Yeah.
It's like it's sort of like if you're an anthropologist and you go to a place where there are people who are indigenous people that are they're pretty closed. They don't just let you in.
Right.
So I was going there 2 or 3 hours a day, and that's still not enough to be completely let in.
Yeah.
But it's enough so that you sort of
They get to know you.
they get to know you and they let you in on their things. But they don't do all of these things in front of everybody, because I also noticed that the birds are very interesting. They look around to see who's looking.
Really?
Before they do something.
Do you think that's a defensive mechanism? It's
No, I
built
think
into their
I think it
nature?
has to do with they know who's dangerous. That there's certain things that are dangerous,
Yeah.
or else that they know that bigger birds can be dangerous.
Yeah.
So they look around to make sure nobody, or if they're caching their seeds or so on, or their acorns.
Caching?
C-A-C-H-E.
Oh, like
C-A-C-H,
catch. Like
yeah,
catch, yeah,
catching
right.
their seeds. They look around to make sure no other bird is looking, so it won't come and take it away.
Uh-huh.
And
You begin to observe these things. Yeah,
and I began to observe these things,
Yeah.
and they started letting me in. Look, at one point, I watched, because there's a pale male, the famous red-tailed hawk.
Okay. That was a particular hawk that became famous?
He lives on the corner of my house on 74th and 5th Avenue.
He has fame?
He's very famous. He has a nest on this building, which he's had for about 27 years.
Really? Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, go ahead.
PBS made a documentary about
Did
him.
they?
And there have been
Yeah.
a bunch of books,
Mhm.
because he came to New York and he created this nest on that building, and the building took it down after a couple of years because the tenants didn't like having a nest.
Took the nest down.
They took
Not
the nest
the building,
down,
yeah.
but it's illegal to take down a live nest. So
Well, go
even
ahead, yeah.
you're not allowed.
Was he still living there?
Well,
or?
he's there in the springtime, but it's still alive. It's considered a live nest because they come back to lay their eggs there.
Oh, there's a migrator thing.
So
yeah,
he
okay.
brings his wives there. It's like he brings his, and he's gone through about 6 of them by now.
Mhm.
And I can't remember the name of the very famous actress who lived in that building. And there were demonstrations in front of there. It was in the New York Times and so on.
Oh, really?
27
About this?
about this. And finally, the building was forced by the government to allow them to build the nest again.
And is it still there?
It's still there, and right now they're laying
We should
eggs.
applaud that then.
Pardon?
We should applaud that thing
Yeah,
that is taking that kind of an attitude toward the creatures.
But anyway, my point
Yeah,
is, like,
yeah,
around
absolutely,
76
yeah.
and so on, there are hawks flying over.
Yeah. Oh.
So
This is all Central Park
Central
in
Park.
New York City.
And
the
pale
biggest
male,
city in
pale
the
male
world.
was
Yeah.
the hawk that arrived, and most of these are his progeny. It's
Uh-huh.
like they're all his children and his grandchildren and his great
How
grandchildren.
can you know that?
Well,
You
because-
get to be where you can read what there's going
Well,
on.
I don't. There are people who follow the hawks.
Yeah, okay.
I don't follow the hawks. I follow the other birds.
Mm.
So at one point, a pale male would sit on a branch
Yeah.
overlooking, and the birds know when they've eaten and when they're not dangerous. So they only flee when they know they haven't eaten. They know,
Well, I didn't quite understand the sentence. The birds know when they've
when
eaten?
the hawks have eaten and
When the
they're not
hawks
hungry.
have eaten, because the
Yes.
hawks can attract the birds?
Hawks eat birds.
They do.
Oh yeah. That's
Oh,
what
I
they
didn't
eat.
know. See, I
They
really
eat-
am not
they-
up on my
hawks
ornithology.
Hawks eat birds and rodents. They usually don't eat sparrows because they like bigger birds like pigeons and
More meat.
and they like squirrels and big rats.
So what are those? Must be very big birds.
Well, they're
A
not
rat
that
is big.
Yeah, well, they eat them, and pigeons, and they like pigeons. So, I was sitting there, and I watched. Pale Male was up there, and the birds weren't paying any attention to him. They weren't hiding. Sometimes, usually when the hawk comes along, they all just go into the bush.
Uh-huh.
They were continuing to eat, and I was kind of worried because I thought, I hope I'm not attracting him to all my friends here.
Yeah, right.
But at a certain point, he flew.
He hadn't been in the scene before that.
Yeah, he would sit there and look.
He was in the scene all the way from the beginning with your pet, with your
Off and
friend?
on.
Off and
yeah.
on, okay.
And his children, too.
Oh, yeah.
And so all of a sudden, Pale Mel flew down into the bush,
Yeah.
and he came out with a rat.
He captured it alive?
He captured the rat. and
Do
carried
they do it
off.
with their claws, or how do they do it?
With the claws? They catch it with the claws. If they get, it's like they get you with their claws, you can't get them off.
Oh,
it's
my gosh.
That's a lot stronger than that's what kills.
What is that thing you're talking about now? What kind of a bird?
Red-tailed hawks?
Hawk.
Hawks. They're raptors.
Do they get big?
They're about this big.
That's big.
you know.
That would scare the daylights out. I'm a coward when it comes
Yeah.
to things out of nature.
Well, so anyway, a very interesting thing happened when the hawk captured this rat and carried it off.
Yeah.
All of the sparrows went into these bushes behind me.
Yeah.
And you know, when they go to sleep at night, you can't. I don't know how they do it. How they hide behind these tiny little leaves sometimes, but you can't see a single bird.
Really?
At night.
They camouflage themselves.
They camouflage themselves.
Huh.
But during the day, when they go in, they sort of sit between the leaves and sing, and you can see them. And so sometimes you'll see a bush that's all green, and you'll see lots of little birds in every little, you know, on every little branch.
Right.
They all went into the bushes, and they were sitting, and you could see them all, and they began to sing what was like a dirge, a funeral dirge.
They sing differently. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a chant. I wish I could have recorded it. It wasn't their normal just chirping and so on.
Oh,
it was,
and you'd come accustomed to the language that they use.
And here
they have a language.
Chant.
Yeah.
This was this chant.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, it sounds like they're mourning this rat, which is unusual because rats also eat sparrows. You know, they go after the babies, and they go after the, you know, if a sparrow.
I think of rats being in garbage and stuff. I don't think they're not hunters, are they?
Oh yeah, they like.
Are rats hunters?
Yes, they eat. They eat.
No, they will
birds.
eat, but they'll eat a sparrow that's fallen by the wayside or is dead or something.
Well, no, you know, a sparrow that's sick or something.
I don't think of a rat as a hunter.
Oh, they're hunters.
Are they really? I don't like rats. I really don't like them. They got those terrible tails.
I saw them catch a blue jay.
And they're ugly.
I saw them catch a blue jay one day.
Really? Really?
And drag it off, you know.
A blue jay on the wing? I mean, a blue that wasn't wounded?
It came down. No, it wasn't wounded or anything, but they were able to catch it.
Well,
but anyway, so here they are.
Nature is red in tooth and claw, I think somebody said.
Not any more than we are. I mean, you know.
Oh, that's the thing we could talk about.
Less than we are.
Maybe. You like animals better than people. Right?
I do.
You become. You used to be very involved in the human scene.
Yeah, but I gave up on.
You've given up on the human endeavor, or the human. Yeah.
Anyway, it was very interesting because it was like this funeral dirge, and I thought maybe this particular rat was a friend of theirs. I don't know, you know. But for some reason, they were like mourning this rat.
Yeah,
you know,
I'll be damned. Okay.
So I saw a lot of things like that.
You're like Thoreau, kind of. Thoreau would be talking about nature that way.
Yeah,
he wrote so well.
Yeah,
too. Yeah, right. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
And unfortunately, most of the nature is gone that existed at the time that Thoreau was around.
You think that is? Is that the case?
Oh yeah.
Really? Like, you think we're destroying?
I think that the statistics say something like 40% of nature of wild nature has gone just in the past 40 years.
In what geographical area?
All over the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Oh yeah.
There's an awful lot of area.
Well, you know, we've turned a lot of nature into farmland. We've taken the forests and we cut them down for timber, and then we replant with foreign trees, and the original fauna never comes back because, you know, the animals that live there they eat certain things. So when you plant these new things that they plant, you know, these uniform forests, it doesn't bring the animals back or the birds or anything.
Yeah, I did geography as a professor and everything, and there is a thing called natural vegetation for the climatic situation and the soil situation. There's a natural vegetation for the various areas.
Yeah. You know that?
Yeah, right.
Brilliant, Harold.
No, right. No.
I thought you didn't know anything about nature.
Oh, no, I know about it. I just, okay, never mind.
So anyway, so we're destroying nature. I mean, it's like, you know, just when you just think of the farming, how it's destroying nature, it's destroyed all the prairies virtually. And, you know, they're using synthetic fertilizers, so that's destroying all of the insects and all of the, which is what a lot of nature eats. And it's destroying the soil because it doesn't replenish itself like it did with natural fertilizer from birds and animals and so on. It's destroying the rivers and the salmon, you know, because they're putting dams all over the place and irrigation, and that destroys the fishes. It destroys, you know, so it's, and the fishes, you know, fertilize the forests too. And so it's a whole cycle of destruction.
Okay, but back again to Central Park.
So we're back again to Central Park. And I have to tell you, every year there are a lot fewer birds.
Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
some ornithologists say that in 30 years there may be no birds left on the earth, and no fishes. And if
How
there are
can
no
there be
birds
no
and no
fishes?
well, that's what's happening. You see, and we're not paying attention.
Who says that? I mean, where's the
Ornithologists, scientists are saying that.
chapter and verse? Who says it? I mean, what agency or who's taking
People who write books, or scientists who write books.
Who are some of the people who are writing most authoritatively on that?
Well,
who do we relate to?
I talk mostly to birds these days, so they're not really interested in
Do they write in a different way? They write the word that's written.
Well, they speak a different language, and
Yeah.
maybe we could show my some of my sparrows and the ramble.
Absolutely,
In Central Park.
the ramble. What's the ramble? It's
The
part
ramble
of
is in the center of Central Park.
Oh, okay.
And
Oh, here
you
we
see
go.
Here, my sparrows?
Here's Maggie. I mean, Maggie. This is her, and there
that's
you
right.
are.
In the back, you
Wait
can
a minute.
see that's the Museum
Is
of
there a
Natural History.
soundtrack to this? No.
No, it's just.
Oh, that's you
That's just
sitting.
it's an anonymous
That's a-
passerby who took this, and these passerbys see me feeding birds, and they stop and they ask me if they can take my picture.
Yeah.
Take a picture, and I ask them to send it to my email.
Yeah.
So I get these emails.
So that was you in the forest in the winter scene.
In
yeah.
the winter season. Yeah, you can play the next one. Of the,
If you can play
of the
another,
forest.
got another one you can play.
The next one of the winter scene, too. So.
Yeah, it's tricky to play these.
So
things,
these
yeah.
are.
Yeah, and there's a forest that we're sitting in there. That looks like a temperate part like around here. Yeah.
So anyway, I got to know these sparrows.
Yeah.
Really well.
Yeah.
And they let me into their world.
Yeah, it's okay. That's important.
Now,
yeah.
at a certain point, this is the bench that I would sit on, right
Here's
inside
the
of
bench.
inside of the Fifth Avenue.
This is right inside.
You see, they're eating out of my hand there.
Look at that. Look at that. They are friends.
Yeah.
And you come to identify them as individuals?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah. But
Well,
it's funny,
that's interesting.
not so much because of the way they look, although some of them have identifying marks, like maybe they'll have a white spot on the head or something.
Yeah.
But most of them I can identify by the way they move, the way they relate to me.
Okay.
And so if they don't move, I can only identify them by the way they relate to me.
I see. Right. Okay.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's this
It's
wordless.
called body language.
It's a wordless language. No,
Yeah.
it's not just body language. It's an energetic language too.
Okay.
Meaning it's something that happens on another level.
Okay.
And what I finally came to understand, I understood, with this sparrow that I call medicine sparrow, he was kind of like an abbot. And these other sparrows were like novices that he was over. And I realized, I said, this is what St. Francis understood.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
when he
right.
used to spend all that time with his sparrows.
Yeah.
And interestingly, when Francis formed his order, he formed a loose order, not a regimented order.
Okay, yeah.
Very much like the sparrows have.
Yeah, really.
Where there's a sort of a rule, but, people don't, it's not like, you have to.
Written in stone, yeah.
Yeah, nothing is written in stone. It's
Yeah.
just a loose order. And the monks were brown.
Yeah,
like
that's
sparrows,
true. That is true, yeah. Is that
And,
Franciscan?
Franciscans.
Yeah, right.
St.
right,
Francis.
Yeah, right.
And they write that he used to spend months out there with them, communing with them and preaching to them and so on. And I realized, this. I think he shaped his order based on what he saw, how the sparrows.
I
order
suppose
is.
people are down through the ages have been embedded in nature.
Yeah. So anyway, I began to realize, it's like we always talk about animals' intelligence in terms of, like if a parrot can talk, we say it talks at the level of a 3 or 4 year old. So therefore, it's at the level of a 3 or 4 year old intelligence-wise.
Yeah.
But that's not true, because if we spoke sparrow language, they would probably say, well, they're just at the level of 3 or 4.
Yeah,
too,
right. No, I hear you.
Meaning, it's like
Right.
they don't. It's like they have a different brain and everything,
Right,
so
right.
they don't. Their intelligence is different. So the fact that they can learn as much as a 3 or 4 level and a 4-year-old in language is pretty amazing already itself. But they know a lot more than we do. Look,
Just like some people get good at bird calls. Some people get good at bird calls,
people
but
who
that's
do bird calls, it's not. These birds have a language. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not just bird.
you
calls.
can't become a good speaker of sparrow. or
I don't think you can.
hawk,
No.
or eagle.
I don't think you can. You
No.
can learn some of their calls. You know,
Mhm.
like somebody could come and learn how, you know, like if they hear us say hey all the time, they say
I bet
hey.
you a lot
or
of people
whatever.
through down the long history of humanity have learned how to communicate.
I think probably
so, don't you?
indigenous people have
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Definitely,
yeah.
Shamans and
Yeah,
medicine
sure,
men and so
absolutely,
on, definitely.
yeah.
And mystics.
Yeah, the mystics,
So
yeah.
what I
Mhm.
want to get into is
Yeah.
what I came to realize was that birds
Yeah.
in particular, I know birds in particular.
Yeah.
Birds in particular, they speak the language of mysticism.
Interesting,
Okay?
very interesting.
And
Develop
when you
it.
think,
Yeah, the
you know,
idea.
you think of what mystics are generally considered to have a higher level of consciousness than us ordinary folk. Right?
Well, yeah, there are people who assert that. Yeah.
And you know, because they commune with the wider,
Yeah.
you know, the wider
Consciousness,
and
Uh-huh.
and what some people call God or whatever
Yeah.
and so on. And they're
That's right.
okay. Well, mystics, you know, they don't know how to read the stock market.
No.
They don't analyze things.
You're talking birds now.
No, I'm talking about people.
Oh,
People who are mystics.
Yeah.
Meaning-
Oh, I see.
Meaning
Right.
I'm saying
Exactly.
we're judging
Exactly.
animals by the
Yeah.
intelligence supposedly,
Yeah.
but mystics are not judged by their ability
I
to
hear you, yeah.
understand mathematics or anything,
Right.
or by their ability to defend themselves
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Mystics don't, you know, they don't need buildings and, you know, it's like they're beyond all of that,
Yeah.
and they're considered to be on a higher level. So I consider
Oh.
that, you know, what I found out was these birds are on a higher level. So they don't, you know,
okay.
they may not know how to,
Interesting.
they don't have an analytical brain,
Mhm.
but an analytical brain is not the higher level of brain. They have a higher level of brain. And what they do is they unite heaven and earth, you know, it's sort of like, because they can fly.
That's true.
Because they can
can.
fly.
I can't.
No,
I've tried.
no. And humans have not been able to figure out all of the aerodynamics of these birds.
Wow. Okay.
Still yet. We're still trying to use it so we can apply it mainly to our military aircraft.
Yeah. Right. How we can bigger and better bombs.
so we can
bigger and better airplanes
can
to
have
drop bigger and better
more
bombs
control,
on more and more people.
more control over more
Yeah.
people.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And they don't fly out of control. They fly because they're letting go. Because you have to let go in order to fly.
That's true. It is. Yeah.
And
It's
that's
a
what
different
mystics-
consciousness.
And
in
that's
of
what
itself.
mystics do.
That's what
they're
mystics
about
do.
letting go.
Yeah. They.
And that's what Thoreau talked about.
Right.
you know.
Right. Thoreau's
go.
great. He really
Exactly.
was. Yeah.
So he understood that. Even he may not have explained it that way, but he obviously went into that
Yeah.
consciousness. And you know, I find this is a book that it was
Yeah,
written
that's
by Joe Hutto, who was
Yeah.
a naturalist. He's a scientist,
Mhm.
and it's called Illumination in the Flatwoods, and it was made into a PBS documentary a few years ago,
Oh, okay.
which is called My Life as a Turkey. And I recommend it to everyone. You can find it on YouTube. My
Yeah.
Life as a Turkey,
Mhm.
and it's basically it's what Joe Hutto did was he took 20-some wild turkey eggs,
Wild turkeys.
and
yeah, okay.
he put them in an incubator, and then he hatched them, and he imprinted them, because when you imprint, the first thing that these little birds see when they come out
Is what?
is
What?
they consider their parent.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So if it's not a wild turkey and they see you, then they'll follow you around like you're the parent.
Is that true?
Yeah,
They do.
uh-huh.
Yeah, for a fact.
And
right.
a whole bunch of wild birds do that. Geese and so on. And so he imprinted them, and he raised them full time for about a year until they left, because they were, like they would leave the mother turkey.
Mhm.
And he was their parent. And so he talks here about everything he learned from living with these birds. And the documentary is a reenactment of this, because there was nobody filming it when he did it. It's an actor who actually imprinted
Yeah.
eggs and went through the whole year, and they filmed it all and so on. And interestingly, because you don't usually hear a scientist saying this, I'm going to read a little bit.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. He says, many researchers seem to be in agreement that our consciousness is identified by a language-based representational system that is unique among all of life. That's humans. It enables us to organize and synthesize vast amounts of information through symbolization, to make intellectual abstractions, and to create culture. But I would suggest that human consciousness could be viewed as more of a nervous bureaucracy than a state of sentient awareness.
Well,
and that's after he spends all this time with nature. By the definitions above, science appears to be describing an existential consciousness, an awareness of self that can ultimately alienate one entirely from the rest of the universe, creating a sense of isolation, vulnerability, and mortality, the existential human dilemma.
Yeah, true enough. That's true.
This could be uniquely human, a result of a highly developed language-based brain function. Human existential alienation seems to be in opposition to a fully conscious and nonverbal experience that the esoteric religions have identified and utilized for thousands of years to manifest psychological and spiritual union of the individual with the universe.
Is that across the board?
This experience may precede evolutionarily the abstract nature of the human mind. Perhaps in our whirlwind evolutionary journey, we have misplaced a vital aspect of our being that we would do well to recover. Now, I read this after I had spent these few years with my sparrows.
Yeah, right.
But
so that rings a bell, yeah, right.
That's what
a larger meaning to what you've been experiencing, right?
So,
yeah.
When I began to be able to walk more,
Yeah, you'd hurt your knee for a while.
Well, for 2 years I was
I
on
know.
that
I remember
park
you were.
bench,
Yeah, right.
And so when I began to be able to walk more, I started going farther into the Ramble, which is this part of Central Park that was initially created to resemble wild Appalachia, but now it's full of fences and pretty little walkways for tourists, and they filled it up with tourists in the past few. But anyway, I found a little place where I go and yeah.
Hold the book.
No, hold the book up, yeah. Illumination in the Flatwoods is the book, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, hold it. Well, let her get it focused. Focus. Can we focus? Maybe we
So
can't.
there he is with his wild turkeys.
We can't focus. Well, all right. You can see the book.
You can see it.
Yeah.
So
okay,
anyway,
there it is. Yeah.
When I started going to the Ramble, it's like it was sort of like my first lesson with the birds was over, and I was meant to go and meet other types of birds. So I started going to the Ramble, and there, I still have my sparrows come there, but there's a different flock of sparrows.
You can identify this.
Well, yeah, I know.
You can identify one flock against another.
Yeah,
they all
well, they're
look
in
the
different-
same to me.
They're territorial, so they're in a different area,
Uh-huh.
and they relate to me differently, so I know they're different.
Okay.
But in the Ramble, at first of all, I went and I was looking for sparrows because sparrows was my thing.
There's a book, The Eyes on the Sparrow. What is that book?
I don't know it.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, a nuthatch started coming to me.
A what?
A nuthatch, and maybe you
What
could
is a nuthatch?
Put up another. A nuthatch is a bird. It's a little blue and white bird, and they're actually pretty friendly too.
Are we going to try and get an
to humans.
example?
And he comes,
Wait a minute. Wait.
Some more pictures.
Yeah,
show some pictures. Go ahead.
Show some pictures.
Yeah. So it's a.
And so he.
Wait, she's
he
going to
comes
show
on-
some, I think.
He comes
now.
on my hand, and he brings his mate and sometimes his offspring and so on, and they come on my hand. And then the titmice were coming, and the chickadees.
Is that the nuthatch, or what is this?
That's a blue jay. That's a blue jay that comes. It comes down to that tree. I put peanuts up on the tree, and they come down. And some of them come and get them out of my hand, but most of them, it's like. And blue jays are very important because they warn birds of hawks. They warn of hawks.
Really?
So they're
Yeah.
protectors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you put up the next one? Yeah. The next one I think is a nuthatch. And so there are nuthatches and there are mourning doves, and there are and there's a red belly woodpecker that
How
comes.
do they sort it out among themselves, all those birds that are in Central Park?
What do you mean?
I mean, they have bands. Do they have groups of people
They have
that
groups,
protect
yeah.
themselves, or
Yeah,
what's the pecking order we have in terms
The
of
bigger birds
few-
are the little birds see to the bigger birds. That's the pecking order. But then among the same species, they have their leaders.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And so sometimes a bird will come and sit, for instance, with the nuthatches. Sometimes the mate will come and won't come down until yeah. Go to the next one, because the next one I think is the nuthatch.
Mm.
The next moving picture. They're on the left. Yeah.
Yeah, so there'll be that. So you're really learning a lot from the birds.
Yeah. So they come, and they're very aware of the fact that everything is just being disappeared and everything. I get, it's like you just, and there's so.
You don't think you're reading your own sentiment
When I
into
first
them?
went out there. Okay, here's the nuthatch. That's the nuthatch.
That's a nuthatch.
Wow. By a bird lady.
Did it take a long time to get it to where they would do that with you? They'd have to trust you, I would think.
They trust you.
You have to build trust, don't you?
Yeah, you have to build trust. And there's something really beautiful when a bird trusts you, when a wild animal trusts you.
Yeah, I would think so.
So that's a nuthatch.
Yeah.
And of course, the thing about these birds is that, and the mourning doves, there's a few of them that come and eat out of my hand. Now, when the squirrels come, they chase all the birds away. That's because they're a little bit bigger.
Do the squirrels attack birds?
They jump on them. They try to
Would
jump on them.
Would they kill them?
Sometimes
Eat
they eat them.
Would they eat birds?
They eat baby birds.
Yeah.
So I saw the birds will attack them en masse if there's a nest.
Really?
It's like they'll all gang up on the squirrels.
On a squirrel.
Yeah. And for instance, the robins apparently can. That's later. That's later. Don't put that one up yet. That's a wild bird hunt. Yeah. So anyway, so I began to learn that that these birds are amazing, and there are there's cardinals that come and eat out of my hand, and
are there other people around?
And there's a red belly woodpecker. You could that's one of the pictures. You could put the red belly no, that's a pigeon. That's later. Put the red belly woodpecker up. I think that's before. No, that's in front of my house. No.
Hmm. It's a little hard to get them all sorted out.
Before, no, you're at the end. You go to the left. I think there's the red belly woodpecker was next to the one at the nuthatch. No, those are later. Go back to the left.
No, it's a little tricky.
To the right. Anyway, there's a red belly woodpecker that comes.
Yeah.
And he comes down and he talks to me. Now, and this is very interesting.
Talks to you.
Yeah, he goes choo 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 choo, to tell me he's there, and I go and I give him he comes down and he gets the peanut from my hand. And sometimes he'll wait for me to, sometimes the birds will line up so that there's several species there.
Really?
Yeah, and usually. That's the red belly. You can't really see him too well, but that's the red belly woodpecker coming down.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
You see him, but you see there's his beak.
Now, where did these pictures come from? People walking by?
Now, this is a friend of mine who took it, Ana Berta Carrizo. She took this one, and she took the last one, the movie of the nuthatch. She did that picture too. And she's a photographer actually from Panama. She's a friend of mine, and she went. This was last week. She went, or it was last Saturday. And she went. I took her to meet my birds, and she took a few pictures.
I took them to meet my birds.
But most of the pictures,
most people take them to meet your friends.
Well,
and
those
you
are
take
my
them
friends.
with your birds.
And you had disappeared a long time, so I didn't have any more friends.
No, cut it out. Yeah.
But most of the pictures are taken by passersby, and I just ask them. I say, can you email it to me? And they email them to me.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I have a whole bunch of pictures like that.
So you've gotten. It's been quite a learning experience for you.
Quite a learning experience, and I'm actually forgetting English. Sometimes I can't remember words.
You're thinking in bird.
I'm thinking in it becomes it's like a wordless language. Where there are no words. It's like big. It's a different.
Yeah, it's at another level too.
It's at
language.
Another level. Yeah, it's a whole different thing, and but if you don't associate with them, you lose that. And that's one of the things that Joe Hutto says. After spending a whole year with these turkeys, once they grew up and they left, flew the coop, he said, during that year he would go out and he would see lots of rattlesnakes and lots of other birds and all kinds of animals and so on that he had never seen in that quantity before. And he said nature just opened up to him. And once the turkeys left, it closed down again.
Isn't that something?
And when he would go out, he said he no longer felt that that connection to the enchantment anymore.
So what do you think? Do you think we're getting more and more out of touch with the birds or the natural world? And that's a major problem for humanity?
I think so. And, you know, I look at the birds. I look at these birds, for instance. They don't need to have buildings and, you know, they don't need to control everything around them. And, you know, and death is something they accept. You know.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like, you know, like I think that death to them is maybe like the mystics. You know, mystics get martyred and they don't, you know, they just, you know, they feel the pain and everything, but it has a different quality to it than it does for us.
Who are, there's ornithologists, or there are people who put grids on things like all the phylum and the this and the that, and then they get down into you know, biological identifications of the organic process. And some of it's animals, some of it's vegetables.
Well, you see, I'm opposed to what most scientists do because they kill a lot of birds for vivisection and all that stuff, and I think that's terrible.
You take obsession to scientific thinking?
I actually do, because I think it's reductionist.
Oh,
you know,
okay, sort of, talk to that. That's good.
It's going in the opposite direction from this mysticism, which is opening up to nature and so on. And you know, it's like I've read. There's a man called he wrote a book, The Tracker, which is a very interesting book, and he's a survivalist, and he has a school, and he spent what's his name? His last name is Brown Jr. I think it's not John Brown, it's Tom Brown Jr.
Okay, I don't know.
And he's a very famous guy, and he studied with an American Indian, an Apache.
Yeah.
From the time he was
those
7.
Those people have been closer to nature.
And this man was a tracker.
Yeah.
And he was one of those people that never agreed to live in civilization, and he just lived out in nature all the time.
There's been
and
a
when
lot
he was
of those
in his
people.
80s, he met Tom Brown Jr., who was just 7 years old or something. And he was his apprentice for about 15 years, I think. And part of his training was that he lived in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. And part of his training was to go out into the Pine Barrens with nothing but a little string around his private parts.
Yeah.
And I think he had a knife, and that was it, and no shelter or anything. And he had to do that and I think he spent like 6 months out there, or maybe 3 months or 6 months out there in the winter.
In the winter?
In the winter.
In what clime? Where?
But after he'd been
is
trained.
That in San Diego? Or
No, in the Pine Barrens in New Jersey.
Oh, in New Jersey.
But this was after he'd been trained how to survive. And he said that at first he thought he was going to die.
Yeah.
But when he finally just surrendered to nature, nature began to help him and present him with food and shelter and all kinds of things.
Well, there are wisdom schools that are all caught up in that kind of thinking and everything. Like, do you think we're getting away from that?
Well, we've gotten away from that. So
with too much thinking, too much putting
into controlling the environment.
To control, yeah,
you know,
right.
So and we're not happy. Look, the only person I know who's happy all the time is a friend of mine who lives in Central Park. He sleeps out there in the snowstorms and everything, and he communes with birds all day.
Are there others there that are commuting with the birds like
Armando,
you?
And he's the one.
Is there a camaraderie among you guys?
Well, it's just him and me, and he showed me how to befriend sparrows and so on, and titmice and so on. But so anyway,
it sounds like you know, there's been that's been part of a way of thinking among a lot of spiritually minded ecologists and so forth think that way.
At a certain point, you know, I'm out there with these birds, and I found out about a place called a rehabilitation center, which is for wild birds.
Yeah. In
New York, it's the only one, and I started going there to volunteer, and you know, I started cleaning cages and so on. That's mostly what volunteers do in places like that. Hard work to take care of birds.
I guess it would be. Yeah.
But at a certain point, after a few weeks, I sort of spontaneously started doing Reiki, which is this Japanese.
Oh yeah,
energy
that's right. You
healing
do Reiki, and that's a great discipline.
And so
yeah.
it ended up that now I do Reiki on the birds. So
You do?
Yes.
Really? Does it work?
It works, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be darned.
And
well,
I also
guess
do it.
it
I
could.
also do it at New York.
Reiki is a type of massage, yeah.
It's not massage; it's energy healing.
Energy
I also
healing,
do
yeah,
it at-
right. I'm sorry.
I also
yeah.
do it at New York Presbyterian Hospital on human beings.
Uh-huh.
And the difference, you see, with human beings, they'll tell you my headache went away.
Yeah,
this, that, and the
right,
other.
right.
With the birds, they don't talk to you. And
Can they demonstrate that there's been
But-
relief from something?
they start getting better and so on. And
Yeah.
but it's like but when I work on them, it's like at a certain point there's this melding. It's like a communion. It's sort of it's this amazing feeling when the bird sort of lets you in energetically.
Okay, I'll bet, yeah.
And you
right.
begin to share the bird consciousness, and you have what Joe Hutto talked about when he spent that time with the wild turkeys, where nature just opened up to him. And I feel that it does that to a certain point with me. It would do it more if I lived out there 24 hours a day. But
Would it do it more if you live in the wilds of Alaska? Or
exactly.
something?
But
Yeah.
at my age, I can't. It's like I'm too far behind. You have to learn how. You have to grow up knowing how to do that. In order
Well,
to-
people in various environments do. I've
Well,
been
but
in
they grow
certain
up- they
environments
grow
where
up.
people are living almost naturally, practically no touch with civilization
But you have to
at
grow
all.
up like that.
Yeah, I
mean,
guess so,
You
yeah.
and I can't just
Well, the
decide to go
society,
live like that.
society, humanity has grown up. If you think of the sweep of human history, we lived that way for a long time, very much nested in nature.
Well, I think we've grown down.
You think that, right?
Meaning,
yeah.
I think we've gone backwards. You know.
Well, I guess there are a lot of people who think that, and a lot of the wisdom schools are that way.
Exactly.
And they're saying to commune with nature and all that. A lot of
Show the pictures of me at the Wild Bird Fund. There's one with the swan, and then the other one where I have a yellow gown on, and this is we have some swans there. No, okay, that's one. You can show that. That's me working with the pigeons.
I don't see
The one
it.
on the right. No, not that one. Not that one. The other one you had before. The one behind that one. That one. No. So that's me.
Is
You
that
see,
you? There
what I
you
do,
are.
I work a lot with the pigeons in the isolation, and when they're in isolation, it means they separate them from the other birds because they get neurological, and that could be. Sometimes it's lead poisoning. But sometimes it's a virus. So and other times it could be they have salmonella or different things that are contagious. They're not contagious to humans. They're contagious to other birds.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But because most people think that birds, that pigeons carry all kinds of diseases. This is not true.
Yeah.
They don't carry any more diseases than domestic dogs or cats do. Probably fewer.
Yeah.
So so I go and you can see I have gloves on. Don't take the picture down. I have blue gloves on and I'm holding a pigeon and I wear a gown.
Yeah.
Because I'm handling these pigeons that are the sickest pigeons there. And I'm doing Reiki. See, I'm just holding it.
Reiki,
I'm
maybe
doing
just
Reiki.
quick. That's a healing thing.
It's a healing. It's a
used
Japanese.
with people.
It's a Japanese form of qigong, which is a healing.
Qigong, yeah.
It's an Asian healing.
Yeah, right.
system
Ancient.
which
It's
you
an
use-
ancient thing, isn't it?
You
Yeah.
use, you
And
use
you're a registered or something. You done that with Reiki.
I teach it too.
Yeah. There will be people who will know that.
And,
it's a therapy. Yeah.
But what happened is, because a lot of the birds don't make it, and when I'm there, we see birds come in that have been hit by automobiles.
Yeah, right.
It's like a quarter of a million birds die running into windows in New York. Because they see the reflection and they see trees on the other side. The Metropolitan Museum is the worst culprit, and they won't do anything about their windows. The Jacob Javits Center has bird-friendly windows, which means they have something in the glass that the birds can see.
Really?
So they don't run into them.
Isn't that a good idea?
It should have it in all the buildings in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, it's like birds come in that are poisoned and so on, and it's mostly, human stuff.
Yeah.
And I see them, they come in and they're hungry because they don't have enough to eat, especially pigeons. Pigeons are grain eaters. They eat grains and seeds. And they have to eat, Dunkin' Donuts and pizza crusts and things. That's all they have in New York. So fortunately, there's some people that put seeds out in certain places.
I saw a fellow on 9th Avenue one day. He had a great big bag full of breadcrumbs. and he was putting them out, and he had about 1,000 pigeons around.
Well, the problem with
him.
breadcrumbs,
and he's talking to them.
breadcrumbs are just as bad for pigeons as they are for us.
Well, he did it because that's what he was doing.
That's what he had. That's what he had. So but that's what they eat but they come in and their immune. It destroys your immune system if you eat something that has no nutrition. White bread. And you don't get any. A
lot of people eat white bread.
Well, and look at how they get sick and everything. This is all white.
So what's the overall prescription?
So what I wanted to say was that when I realized the magnitude of what's happening, of what we're doing to and how these birds and so on are suffering because of us. And people hate pigeons because Woody Allen once called them rats with wings.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And he lived across the street from me.
Yeah, Woody Allen
I wish he'd retract that publicly. Maybe we should get in touch with him and ask him.
Well, you'd have to deal with his agent.
His agent.
Yeah, and the lawyers.
And the lawyers, yeah.
Do birds have lawyers, or do they have representatives?
They have us.
The creatures don't have, they have people like you that can benefit. And then it goes into a larger sense of appreciation for the environment.
When I first started, spending a lot of time with birds, it was a euphoric.
Yeah, I know. I love birds.
But now I'm
wonderful.
depressed most of the time because I'm thinking about how much how hard their lives are and what we're doing to them and all the suffering and so on that we're causing.
What can we do to make life better for birds?
Well, in Aachen,
what can humanity? What should policy be for people?
In the city of Aachen, for instance, in Germany.
In Germany, yeah.
They have built lofts outside just all around the city.
Yeah.
For pigeons to live in.
All right.
And they feed them on a daily basis.
Okay.
Okay.
Aren't they going to make a mess and everything with
they
their
clean it
dung
up.
and that? Yeah. Yeah.
Look, we clean up after humans. We clean up after parades.
Yeah, I know.
We have acid rain. We complain that their poop is acid. Well, the acid rain that we create is a lot more devastating in the world than anything.
Yeah. What's the overall?
So we should have a budget for cleaning up after pigeons.
Well, all right. I think it's a good idea.
Up until the 1940s, pigeon poop was considered to be one of the top levels of fertilizer for agriculture.
Is it still recognized as
No,
such?
because now we use synthetic fertilizers. But farmers in this country used to have pigeons for the fertilizer. They used to have flocks of pigeons because pigeons are homers, so they go back to where they're born. So if you raise a flock of pigeons, they'll always come back.
You're coming to understand the whole avian world better than you did, right? By dealing with the ones that are in Central Park.
Now I'm sad.
You're sad because of humanity.
I'm sad because of humanity. And I'm sad because these birds are sad, and they tell me about it because they know what we're doing.
How do you think so?
Yes, they're very.
You sure it's not your own imagination?
And this is a pigeon that comes to
That's good.
It comes to my bill. It waits for me in front of.
That's a beautiful
Isn't
picture.
she beautiful?
That's a beautiful
Her name is
picture.
Blue.
That could be, yeah.
And she comes.
She's a friend, right?
She's been coming since last June.
Right.
Every day.
Yeah.
She waits for me in front of my building.
That's the one that waits for you. You come out, she's always there.
She's
every time.
Sometimes I come out at 7 in the morning, and sometimes I come out at 3 in the afternoon. So she's there 3/4 of the time because I don't come out the same time every day.
Do you think she's waiting to see you, or do you think she's waiting
to see me?
No, you think she's going to get something you're going to give her to eat?
This is the other thing I've learned.
You think it's just she's on the take?
This is the thing about birds that I've learned. For them, eating is a method of communication that we have.
Yeah.
It's like when you used to go to your grandmother's house and there was always food there. You didn't just go
always. There was somehow always something in the oven.
But it
always.
wasn't. But you loved your grandmother.
Oh
you
gosh,
didn't just
you
didn't just go to eat the food. But if there hadn't been any food, you would have wondered why.
Well, I would have, because I always wondered how the heck could be arranged, but there was always something baking in the oven.
So
smells great.
So with these birds, it's that, because I see it. Once they've finished eating, they still hang around.
Yeah.
They don't,
Yeah.
So they're hanging around.
It's a social matter, right?
It's a social matter.
They are social creatures.
They're social creatures.
Yeah.
And sometimes they come when they're not hungry. And
we
they
could
hang
learn
around
from
too.
them, maybe.
Sometimes they come sometimes she'll come on my hand and she's not hungry, and she still comes on my hand and doesn't eat any of the seeds. And I found, the robins can't chew seeds. Robins. So
they can't?
No, because they have soft beaks. They eat worms.
They go away in the winter.
So
they go south.
Most of them go away in the winter. So I feed peanuts and sunflower seeds to the birds. And the robins, I chew up the peanuts, and I make a little ball, And they went, and there's this one robin that
That's
comes.
for a baby robin or
No,
for a big robin?
big robin, an adult robin. And it comes, and I throw it the ball, and it eats. And last fall, the last day it was here before it left, it came and it brought me a worm.
You mean before it brought you a worm?
It brought me a worm.
In payment, right?
Yes.
Or in exchange?
To show me.
You have an exchange among the species,
exactly. And it just came back 2 weeks ago. And so it's there. It comes every day for the peanuts.
So your overall sense of disquietude with the world has to do with this predator species called Homo sapien.
And this is much.
You think Homo sapien is worrying the world, not the creatures?
This is much more important than any of the political things I used to worry about.
Well, you've written well on all the political things, and all kinds of things.
Because really, human beings are out of control.
You think so?
So I was writing about it. Things that had to do with specific countries and so on. And it's much more than that. It's about the destruction of nature. And by the way, I want to say something that very few people have picked up on.
Yeah.
Pope Francis, who's this.
Yeah, I like Pope Francis.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And he declared that it's a sin to participate in any activity that is destructive of nature. And I
There's
thought
a lot
that
of
was
sin going on.
Well, but I heard one priest say nobody's ever come to confess that they're destroying nature.
You're right.
Because they don't.
They put up
they
a
didn't
new,
get it. They
the
didn't
new
get
basilica,
it. So people are running around thinking that they're helping by recycling. I don't know, plastic bottles, and that's like. I mean, that's just a grain of sand. I mean, we need to change our whole way of living, not just recycling bottles and plastic bags and so on. I mean, we need to get rid of plastic because plastic is now, these micro particles of plastic are in everything in the ocean.
Out in the Pacific Oceans, it's full of gyres, full of plastic.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and the sea salt has microplastic in it. It's going to take millions of years for that to
So are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect, and the human prospect is part of the larger prospect for the evolutionary process, the vegetative and animalistic pattern of planet development on the planet. Are you optimistic for the planet or pessimistic for the future of the planet?
Well,
that's the question usually goes, do you...
The best answer I can give you is a friend of mine, a native Indian from Mexico, an Otomi Indian. I met him at one of these climate change congresses.
Climate change is really a lot going on about that, global warming,
And I said to him, it's terrible what we're doing. We're going to blow everything up. And he said, well, so? And I said, well, because we're taking all of nature with us. And he said, don't worry about it, Nita. He said, nature will come back. I said, if we have a nuclear holocaust? He said, it may take a few million years, but it'll come back.
Well, that's pretty philosophical. Yeah, right.
So that's the way the natives look at it.
Well,
and they think it's inevitable that it's going to happen, and
Well, yeah.
And the last thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, do it. We only got about a minute left.
There's a
go ahead.
book on pigeons by a friend of mine, Andrew Garn.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Can you get in tight on that?
Unfortunately, I couldn't get it. It came out last
so you could
week.
Try.
Last week.
And his name is what? Garn?
Andrew Garn. And it came out last week, and unfortunately I couldn't get a copy of the book. They sold out at this place. It's called New York City Pigeons, Behind the Feathers by Andrew Garn, and it's a beautiful book. And he writes it as someone he's also a volunteer up at the World Wild Bird Fund. And half of the proceeds will go to help these wild birds, take care of them and get them sick and so on. And Andrew,
get them well.
Yeah, get them well. And Andrew, and this book is just beautiful, and and he basically takes the position that pigeons are his muses and have been for the past 10 years.
This animal,
and they're beautiful.
Yeah.
But, nobody looks at pigeons.
It's a spiritual take on things.
They're beautiful.
Right? Yeah, and it comes out of your concern with things.
But if you just look at them,
I know. I agree with you completely.
I heard a story of a man, a New Yorker, who went to the north of Alaska, and the Eskimos took him. Said, "We're taking you to a very special place where there are sacred birds," and they took him on an 18-hour walk and to the coast, and they said, "These are the sacred birds," and it turned out they were pigeons, like in New York, and he was from Brooklyn. But you know.
On that note, we'll say good evening, right? And thank you, my darling. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're always coming down with something. Boy, I'll tell you, Nita Renfrew, that she comes up with so many different things, and it's all good. So thank you very much for viewing. We invite you to tune in. We'll come back again tomorrow. That's it for now, Nita. Thanks a lot for another adventure with Nita Renfrew. It's one after another, and it's all good. And you're all good.
But get Andrew Garn's book,
And
New
Andrew
York
Garn.
Pigeons.
Okay. Thanks a lot for viewing. Okay. Until next time. So I tell you, you sure do come up with them, you know. I was up, I told you, I distrust nature.